Many of us remember the first library we visited during our childhood. We can picture the sidewalk leading to the entrance, recall whether the building was brick, stone, or clapboard, and recollect that special book smell inside. And many of us remember hitting that important rite of passage, receiving our very own library card, a card that opened so many possibilities, offering books, music, movies, research materials, special programming, a safe and comfortable place to gather or study with friends. A local public library may have played an important and interesting role in your personal history. Our Sherborn Library enjoys an important, interesting, and rich role in the history of our town. The first libraries in Sherborn were purchased collections of books for specific purposes. The earliest known collection was the Agricultural Library, a collection of reference books supervised by Bowen Adams and kept at his home next to Pilgrim Church. The Social Circle formed in 1808 for the purpose of setting up a social library. The members of this private club bought, shared, and discussed biographies, history, and travel books, and even some works of fiction, though novels were generally looked down upon at that time. These books were housed in George Clark's store, which was located on the site of the Gandhi statue. In addition, there was a small collection of history, philosophy, and science books associated with the Plain School District, located at 61 North Moore Street, and kept at a house across the street. While these three were the oldest libraries maintained in Sherborn, they were not the oldest in the country, or even in Massachusetts. According to History magazine, the first library in America began with a 400-book donation in 1638 by a Massachusetts clergyman, John Harvard, to a new university that eventually honored him by adopting his name. Another clergyman, Thomas Bray from England, established the first free lending libraries in the American colonies in the late 1600s, and subscription libraries, where member dues paid for book purchases and borrowing privileges were free, debuted in the 1700s. And in 1851, the General Court of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts enacted legislation in the Acts and Resolves, authorizing cities and towns to establish public libraries and to appropriate funds to establish and maintain library facilities and collections. By 1860, in Sherborn, Reverend Theodore Dorr, minister of the First Parish Church, convinced the town to combine all three of the then existing collections, a total 625 volumes, and to fund a central town library. The library was located in the middle, first-floor meeting room of the newly constructed 1858 townhouse, and it was open Saturday afternoons and evenings and on town meeting days. Initially, this Sherborn Library welcomed adult patrons only. It wasn't until waves of immigration and the philosophy of a free public education for children that public libraries spread to the U.S. By the 1880s, Andrew Carnegie was the richest man in the world. He had built an empire in steel, and then he gave it all away, generously funding a system of 1,689 public libraries across America. One such library, built in Washington, D.C. and dedicated to the diffusion of knowledge, was later referred to as the intellectual breadline, because even if you hadn't any money, you could still go there to feed your brain. The oldest tax-supported public library in the country was established just north of Massachusetts in 1883 in Peterborough, New Hampshire. The Peterborough Town Library's claim to importance is not that it was the first library to which public had access. Such libraries had existed well before 1883. Indeed, it was the first created on the principle that the public library, like the public schools and the fire and police stations, was deserving of maintenance by public taxation and should be owned and managed by the people of the community. Our own Sherborn Library is maintained primarily by our town taxes, with gifts from generous local benefactors, traditionally supporting programming and special efforts. In 1906, the library in Sherborn, still housed in the 1858 townhouse, began to include children's books for the collection and to encourage children to visit. The library continued to serve the town, becoming increasingly crowded until 1914. It was in that year that William Bradford Homer Dowse donated a new brick library to the town in memory of his parents, Reverend Edmund and Elizabeth Dowse. The Dowse Library had a reception room, 2 reading rooms, and stacks, along with a basement meeting room, which also housed the town's historical society. By that time, there were nearly 6,000 volumes in the collection, and magazines also circulated for the first time. Library trustees hired a professional to set up a catalog system for the nonfiction collection and had the building open 3 afternoons and 2 evenings a week, with the reading room open on Sunday afternoons as well. That building was not outgrown until the late 1960s. With the building of the present Sherborn Library, the Dowse Library building became the town hall until in 1985 it was sold to the Life Experience School. Most recently, the Dowse Library building was developed as a part of Abbey Road, informing the architecture of a community of homes built in town for active adults. The present Sherborn Library building was the very generous gift of Richard and Mary B. Saltonstall and was built on the site of Solon Academy, Dowse High School. Opened in 1971 and designed by architect James A. S. Walker, the library was featured on the cover and main article of the New England Architect magazine in September 1972. Acting as head librarian, Edna Roth organized the move of approximately 20,000 books from the old building to the new, with town volunteers ferrying hundreds of boxes using cars and station wagons. Our current library director, Elizabeth Johnston, was appointed in May 1988, and in 2011, after much careful planning, the library trustees launched the campaign to raise funds toward the first major renovation of this remarkable building since its inception in 1971. It is this ambitious project to renovate and expand our Sherborn Library that is in progress today. This project is a model for the town of a public-private partnership with funding from a combination of state, municipal, and private donor sources. In keeping with the aesthetic of the existing library structure, the overarching vision for the renovation and expansion project is to create inspiring and functional space at the library for the whole community. The centerpiece of the project is a new wing, which houses a dedicated children's room and adjacent outdoor reading terrace. Below, a sun-filled community room with modern amenities is designed for groups in town to use for meetings, events, and special functions. New and reconfigured spaces include a teen media room and designated tutoring spaces. Our renovated and expanded library will enable the Friends of the Sherborn Library to host favorite programs and events both indoors and out. The renovated and expanded library will be code compliant, fully accessible, and built to comply with the U.S. Green Building Council's LEED requirements. Around the renovated library, carefully designed exterior paths and walkways will connect the library and make the town campus more attractive and functional. As construction continues, the Sherborn Library remains in its temporary home across Sanger Street at the Sherborn Community Center. There, the library staff works hard, keeping the library running without interruption and offering a wide range of programming for patrons of all ages. For more information about the renovation project, please visit the redesigned library website at sherbornlibrary.org.